competitive comes to mind, I would add competitive with like a savvy skill set. And then that relentless, never give up spirit. So I do think competitive reps as a start, for a lot of athletes get into sales in general. And it's good because I give this illustration to a lot of my reps. And I think the competitive, the ones that say, hey, tell me more, doc. You mentioned this the other day. The ones that don't just roll over and say, you're right, I won't sell you my product. The ones say, can we dig on that later, doc? I'm not going to leave you alone until you tell me why you think that product is better for your patients, but not in a way that annoys or, so those relentless, competitive mixed with savvy sales people, I think are a difference maker.
Welcome to the Fisher Search Group Leadership Podcast. I'm Brett Fisher, founder and managing director of Fisher Search Group. This podcast exists to serve the medtech community through authentic conversations with the leaders building companies, commercial teams, and careers all across healthcare. On this podcast, you'll hear diverse perspectives from sales leaders, marketing executives, talent acquisition professionals, trainers, entrepreneurs, and even CEOs. Because great leadership isn't built from a single playbook, this podcast is shaped by diversity of thought. Our mission is simple: to share practical insights, hard-earned lessons, and inspiring stories that help propel the next generation of leaders in medtech. Whether you're an individual contributor, a first-time manager, or a seasoned executive, we hope every episode leaves you with an idea, a perspective, or an action that helps move you forward. Thank you for being a part of this community. Now get ready for my next guest. Let's go. Welcome back, everyone, to the Fisher Search Group Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Brett Fisher, and I'm joined by my guest once again, Jon Alwinson. Welcome back to the program. Jon, how are you today?
Brett, I'm awesome. It is so good to be back with you, my friend.
You're the first person we've had in 22 episodes who it was like either we just didn't have enough time or the content was so good. We're going to bring you back and we're going to go into even more content. So I like to keep them kind of 30 minutes tightly stacked, but it was just too good to pass up to bring you back. So thank you. For everyone else, in our last conversation, episode 22, we explored how to stay in the deep end. How does Jon do it day after day, leading at a high level, hiring top performers, and continuing to climb even after you've achieved success. Then we wrapped, and I realized we only had scratched the surface. So today, we're bringing Jon back, and we're going to go even deeper behind the operating system behind elite performance, the daily discipline, mindset, territory mapping, and lessons from his book, Relentless Sales, that have shaped his career. So stick around. At the end, I believe Jon may have a little surprise for everyone that he wants to share. So you don't want to miss that. But here we go. Episode 23. Jon, let's dive in. Our first segment is going to be the power of daily discipline. When I listened to your book, I was doing my daily discipline by getting movement every day. I'm listening to your book. What really struck me was your morning routine. Everyone has a little bit different of a morning routine, but I want you to go into that for our listeners and tell them, how did that develop over time, your routine?
Yeah, well, I think it was modeled for me pretty well. My parents both are early risers. So I think the lesson was wake up early, right? Early bird gets the worm or whatever the saying is, right? And so, so for me, it was modeled well. And for me, I think it's waking up early, really getting ourselves hydrated and fueled up. And for me, I'm a little bit of a caffeine addict. Mm-hmm. And so, I'll drink my water. I'll have my espresso or two at times, depending on how groggy I am that morning. And then I really get into what I talk about in the book, which is kind of my morning routine. So I'm a man of faith. So first thing, we're grabbing the Bible. I'm reading something wise in the book of Proverbs and digging in. And then I also have a lot of affirmations as well, Brett, that I speak to myself because as you know, and as the world knows, the world of sales is very stressful. And we're kind of like an air balloon. Like we start full in the morning and then each bad thing that happens or hard thing, the air kind of gets sucked out of us a little bit each. And so for me, that's how I keep my energy up. That's how I keep my morale up and just keep my energy in the right spot.
So when we did the brainstorm, you actually had them on a sheet of paper. Do you have those with you? Like to contextualize this for everyone.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah. I
have
mean,
them
this,
written down? Do you update them on a monthly basis? Do you revisit them? Or are there certain that you go through no matter what? You're just going down the affirmations every day.
yeah, you know what? There's days that we scale. Like this one is one of the pages that I hold up, right? And so
Nice.
these are more just kind of affirmations I have. I've got one a different document that I showed you the other day, but I think it's kind of get what I need to in when I can. And so I try to be as disciplined with that. But this morning I had a really big meeting I had to get out the door for, so I may have got through a fourth of what I normally do.
So to set this up, this block of time, do you need to be disciplined about going to bed at a certain time so you can not sacrifice sleep? Or it's no matter how late you go to bed, you're up at 6 or whatever time that is.
Yeah, I try to get as close to between 5 and 5:30 as I can every day. It is if you go to bed late, that just screws everything up. And we're finding out more and more how important sleep is, and we've always known it's important. But I do want your listeners to know. I mean, their sleep is so important, right? So don't get 3 or 4 hours of sleep, right? We need that 6 to 8 hours minimum.
So for listeners who want to get into a daily discipline, a routine, how can they ease in? What are the kind of the first one or two things? You talked about scripture, prayer, affirmations,
Yeah.
water, caffeine, anything else? Anyone just kind of getting into this? I guess blocking the time, like just making sure that's protected time, right?
Right. And as disciplined as I'd like to say I am, not looking at your phone right away, I'm not great at that. A lot of times I do look at my phone, but I'm getting better. And so I do think, look at your schedule the night before, plan out your big rocks or your attack list or whatever you're working on the next day. And then, give yourself that grace anywhere from that 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. range. Make sure you kind of keep the phone away as much as possible so you can focus on what you need to do. Now, certain medical device jobs you're on call, and so we have to keep that realistic perspective out there that you may be in trauma, which you're always on call,
Sure.
or you may be in some orthopedic procedures, which things change on a dime. So give yourself a little grace there too.
Have you ever experimented with keeping your phone outside of the room and then maybe not touching it until you're done with that first hour of the day?
I have, and it's funny, I have one of those lights that's an alarm light that was supposed to like wake you up.
Okay.
I haven't. The phone is just so easy from an alarm clock perspective
Yeah,
that
that's true.
it's hard to break.
Awesome. This has been our first section, The Power of Daily Discipline for the Fisher Search Group podcast, episode 23. Returning guest, Jon Alwinson, welcome back. If you like what you hear today, please hit that like button down below. Subscribe to our channel, Fisher Search Group. Leave a comment. We will definitely reply. We are about to jump into our second section, which is bringing faith into it, identity and sources of inspiration. The day is really hard to get through. It could be long. You said rocks, right? We're getting through big, thick things. We got a team to lead. We need sources of inspiration. And what really, pulled on me, and I was like, wow, he brought it up a lot. Pastor's kid, you had a lot of great mentors and influences in around your church. So you brought that in. You brought that into the book, which is awesome. Why do you feel it was really important to bring that into the story?
Yeah, I think because we as salespeople struggle with our identity. I think identity is one of the most powerful things. If we get identity right, and I talk about this in chapter 2 of the book, living from our identity, not for our identity. And it's so funny, even before this podcast, I had someone call me and talk to me about, just how his identity has just been in work, 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 execution. I think we're conditioned to get pats on the back. We're conditioned to believe that what we produce is who we are. And it's so important. If we get that right, Brett, if we get our identity is not in our job, our identity is who we are, as I believe is, created by God, right? The God of the universe. I think we sell more freely. And I think there's a peace, I think there's a confidence, and I think there's a connectedness that allows us to really, really relate with our customers. And honestly, man, I think God blesses it. And I think we sell more when we get that right.
That's great. Have you ever gotten any feedback from readers who maybe didn't share these beliefs?
I have. Yeah, there's been a couple comments, where they're like, "Hey, I think how we outline it in the book, it's not distasteful." So, there's one reader that said, "Hey, I didn't quite realize there was as much faith stuff. That's not for me, but outside of that, I love the book." And so, that's about as nice of a disgruntled customers they get. It wasn't so much that it was a turnoff, but they wanted to call that out. So yeah, it's who I am, and I have to be real about that, right? I'm not
Yeah,
gonna.
no, I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. And for someone who was so close to it your entire life, I mean, how could you not talk about it? So once again, we're talking about Relentless Sales, book written by Jon Alwinson. We'll throw the either QR code or something on the screen so our readers can just go grab it real quick. We are now talking about faith in segment 2. Definitely, it's a part of the subtitle, so it's a part of who you are, the fire of who you are and your authenticity. For someone who isn't faith connected or as connected as you are, where can they find sources of inspiration, accountability, or purpose alongside the work that they do every day?
Yeah, it's such a good question, Brett. I do want your listeners, if faith isn't if faith in Jesus, if faith in God is not really their thing right now, I want to encourage them to be curious, but I
Mm-hmm.
also don't want to be in their face about it either. And so if that's not for them, I think there's a lot of different areas to fuel up our sales journey, right? And I think, obviously I believe that's the center for me, but if that's not for somebody, I believe, there's a lot of ways, right? Being disciplined, exercising, there's all kinds of things, practicing their communication. There's a lot of other areas they can kind of continue to find energy from. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately for me, you know it, I've, been real about it, but faith in Jesus has been my source. But I don't want to turn off somebody who's not. And that's, I want them to be curious, but I don't want to be in their face about it. So hopefully that helps. Anything you want to double click on there, Brett?
Yeah, no, and sources of inspiration, maybe there could be mindfulness, meditation. I know
Yeah.
you talked about affirmations in our first segment, really repeating to yourself the outcomes that you want, speaking out to the universe or to God, the outcomes that you want that you see for yourself and your family, and you repeat it daily, 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 drawing inspiration from that. And no matter how hard we're challenged and pushed and tested and kind of one fire after the other, we're drawing on either God, mindfulness, exercise, audiobook inspirations to keep us going and just to keep us reminded that we're just all human every day and we're
Yeah.
going out there to serve, whether it's our customers, whether it's God, whether it's our colleagues, we're serving, right? We are out there to do something good out there in the world.
Yeah, yeah, that's good, man. I think that's spot on.
Awesome. Let's jump into the next section, segment 3, the hunt. I don't think anyone's heard about this yet. The hunt, building a territory like a business. Once again, if you're just joining, my guest, Jon Alwinson, who is a guest episode 22. We just had that last week that just dropped. A lot of really great material. I wanted to talk more about his book, Relentless Sales, you just heard about. If you like things, please like down below, subscribe to the channel, add a comment. But Jon, I want to turn it over to you to talk about the hunt. You spent years teaching reps how to think differently about territory management that's ultimately led you to this next project. Take it away.
Man, I am so excited about this. This project has been so fun. So we are launching this on July 1st. We are recording this before July 1st. So Brett, you are the first podcast that I've been on to talk about the hunt. So
Amazing.
thank you for having me. Number one. Number two, this is the system that I've created myself, implemented myself, leading to Rookie of the Year, Rep of the Year, Legacy, best 2 years in a row. And then for the last 9.5 years, I've been implementing this with my team. And so this is a system that I believe is tried and true and proven. And this one, I take out everything from motivation. Faith is not really in a part of this. This is more of a structure. I believe that salespeople don't, like, for most part, we don't struggle with motivation, right? We're in sales. We know it's going to be hard. Motivation is not the problem we're solving with this course. What we are solving is structure. And a lot of times, newer salespeople get in the game and then they look around and they say, oh shoot, like, where do I go from here? How do I build this effectively? And I've always been a process oriented person. And so what this is a 5-part system that
Mm-hmm.
walks people in from, number one, organizing their territory, to the customer facing one pager that we give them to guide the conversation. I really try to make it simple and repeatable so they can scale their own sales success.
What was the genesis for actually documenting this and then, I guess, for lack of a better word, commercializing it and getting it out to the to the greater masses? Did someone say, man, you gotta like get this out there? Or is it part of your legacy? Like, what was the impetus for going, you know what, I'm gonna capture this and get it out there?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it starts where you write Relentless Sales, and then I've readers reach out and it's like, "Holy cow, this is great! Thank you. How do I do this, or how do I do this?" And I think for me, it was, how do I scale my impact to help
Mm,
others, right? And I
mm,
think one of the kindest things that you can do for a salesperson, I believe, is this system. So like that's how obviously bought in. I believe, if I could give one thing to salespeople that will help them, teach a man to fish, right? And they'll be successful, and they'll be able to carry on. If there's one thing that can kind of help impact families and lives, I believe this is it. So it's
I
it's
love it.
really teaching them how to hunt.
Got it. So you said new reps struggle when they're starting out, maybe it's overwhelming. They struggle because they don't have a system, right? You talked about and this is the 5-part system. So give us a little insight into the methodology that they're going to receive if they explore this path.
Yeah, for sure. And checking out JonAlwinsonCourse.com, you can see everything kind of outlined. So if your listeners are in a safe spot where they can do that, they can look at the 5-part system. And number one is taking inventory, right? Before you can dominate a territory, you've got to define it, right? So if every customer is in your market, nothing's in your market. So this really narrows their focus down, and understanding what their inventory looks like. And then I go to section 2, and this section two is probably the most profound thing I've ever learned. Back when I was an individual contributor in 2015, a sales manager came up to me and he's like, "Hey man, do you have a zone territory?" And he wasn't even my sales manager. He was another sales manager. And I was like, "No, I think at that point I kind of was like, yeah, I do. But what do you mean by it?" I think I kind of was,
Yeah, right. I
your
don't not have it.
typical, yeah, exactly. So I think I kind of went with it at first. And what he broke down with me is like, dude, you need to have a geographical document that clumps your accounts into different markets, everything from account name to number, key physicians you're working with in that market, the total dollar upside you can get, and really just quantify these markets. And so that document has been refined for the last 10 years, and we've got a phenomenal one with this course that we're rolling out. But really to help the person and the sales rep organize first. If there's one piece of advice I would give your listeners, if they're brand new to sales or if they just feel like they're in a struggle right now, is take the week off. Take the week off, or slow down, organize, and then attack, right? And so what this document does, it organize all your accounts into these geographical zones, quantify what each zone is worth, and then you'll know where to spend your time. And the last thing I'll add is in section 2, the zone territory, this isn't to replace CRMs. What I believe this does is it complements the CRMs.
Perfect. So that's sort of like what is it called? The source of truth, right? In the CRM. But this is the playbook for your specific territory or region if you're a manager, because they're all going to be different and unique. And the level of value for each one of those accounts is going to be different. There's going to be nuance where you are in the country, things like that.
Totally.
So,
This is your map.
yep. So this is what you're referring to as the zone territory methodology.
Yes, and that's section 2 of this. And then, it's funny, we moved to another section called Operation Squeegee. And it was funny, I had a rep who was an incredible high performer on my team. He called me one Friday afternoon. It was Friday or Saturday. I think it was like 5 o'clock on a Friday. And, my son and I were doing some yard work, and I was going to clean the windows. In Georgia, we get this like pollen, Brett, that is like thick yellow pollen. So our
Okay.
windows get caked with it. And
Wow.
so I was getting ready to squeegee my windows, and he was complaining. He was like, "Man, I've sold everything for the last 2 years. How do you guys expect us to grow our business 10% more this year?" Right. And he's kind of complaining about his quota for the year.
Oh,
And I said, "Hey, like let's pause, let's take a step back. Let me call you on Monday, and let's both think through how we can, be successful." And what I really thought through was like, we need to go through, even the best of performers like this guy was and is on my team. We need to go through account by account, line by line, and we need to, like a squeegee on a window, we need to squeeze out every dollar of opportunity. And when we did that with this guy, he grew another 110% that year after. And so there was stuff he was overlooking, that he wasn't just squeegeing everything out of his territory. And there's so much that we overlook in sales that we don't give ourselves credit, especially for those of us that have big sales bags that we
Mm-hmm.
sell, you
Yeah.
know?
So that's all. That's really interesting. But you also just said, let's take a pause on this and let's regroup on Monday. Why did you do that as opposed to trying to help solve the problem in the moment?
Yeah, I think there's the saying, like, don't take the monkey off your rep's back. A lot of times people want to take their problem and throw it on your back, and I wasn't willing to receive what he wanted to put on my back at that moment. But I
Good for
also,
you.
one thing we talk about in the book, Brett, is one of the profound rules I've learned is the 24-hour rule.
Mm,
And
right. I remember.
my 24-hour rule is, because I'm high energy, right? I'm stressed to the max a lot of times, is when stuff hits the fan, just breathe,
Mm,
slow down, and implement the 24-hour rule. So literally every day in my phone, a pop-up comes up at some point during the day and says, Jon, implement the 24-hour rule. And what it does is it teaches me to slow down. And when we do that, Brett, we think of so many other options rather than just, you know, stressing out our direct supervisor, stressing out those around us. I've found that you've got to take a step back. And I think Jocko Willink, he's got his way of saying something similar. I think he talks about detaching from the outcome. So detach for 24
right.
hours, and take a step back.
I love how we just explored a part of the hunt, which led to a tactic you use, the 24-hour rule, which led to pop-up reminders on your phone. Everyone should be adding reminders to your phone to remind you about things, to remind you about things. So thank you
Yeah.
for taking us so intimately and deeply into like what you do, because it is a lot more complicated than just, I mean, it's a lot more well thought out and planned than on the surface. So thank you for, I always love the peeling back the curtain part.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So if you inherited a completely new territory tomorrow, what were the first three things you would do? Like, let's get super tactical here for the listener.
It's so funny you asked that. One of my friends from the lobby. I don't know if you heard of Kendi
Yeah.
Elmore from the lobby. Good,
Yeah.
great guy. He asked me that same question in front of a group of about 100 people and said, Jon, if you were to take over a territory, what would you do? And I smiled. I immediately smiled because I knew I would be successful. And it's not an arrogance. It's not. I don't care if you put me in trauma. I don't care if you put me in orthopedic sales. I don't care if you put me in neuro sales. Whatever, because of this hunt program that I've created a system that allows me to organize my territory, figure out where to hunt and spend my time, and quantify all those different things. So these 5 different sections that we've kind of touched on initially, I know I'll be successful because the structure and the systems I've built over time just leads to repeat success. And not only myself, I've seen it work in dozens of other reps throughout the years too.
Okay. I want to go even deeper for a second, because when you answer that question, the thing that stood out, you said, I will be successful. But that's
Yeah.
because you already have a playbook, you have the hunt. For people who aren't there yet, was there a tipping point for you where you decided, I'm going to have a system, I'm going to be successful? Because you weren't always this
No, no.
confident, prepared, you've like lifted the weights in the gym and you're like ready to go. So let's back up a couple of
Yeah.
steps. What was that tipping point for you where you got the confidence, you knew you had to create a system, and how could people in that position take what you can offer and make the change in their life?
Yeah, I think confidence comes with kind of consistency over time,
Okay.
right? And
Yes.
so, back to my initial point, I don't expect newer reps or reps that one gal who implemented this 2 years later. Is like, man, I wish I would have done this 2 years ago, Jon. I wish I'd have listened to your advice 2 years ago, because she now has implemented. She's like, I'm the number one rep in our company right now, which is awesome.
Wow.
And so there's nothing that makes me more happy than and fulfilled than helping another person, because that helps her family, etc. So first off, I don't think anybody should know this stuff offhand.
Right. Right.
I don't think a lot of managers or businesses teach it. A lot of times they're like, hey, Brett, can you sell? Do you have a sales process? We're going to put you through 2 weeks of training and then go run out there and be successful at medical sales. I don't think enough companies are training people, hence the reason why I'm rolling this out. I don't think they're giving people the sales structure. So most of us don't have that unless we've got good mentors, unless we're fortunate enough like me to have some random manager ask him about a system, and it was just kind of a divine thing. But I don't expect anybody to know this, but what I do think is if you implement this program, or if you take and glean from what I'm trying to share, I think it
Yes.
will help you catapult your career in a powerful way early.
And that's really what we want to offer on this channel, is how can we listen to these awesome stories to help people get there faster, catapult their career, give them the resources, learn about the hunt, read Relentless Sales, listen to this particular person speak about, marketing leadership or whatever it is. So that is
Yeah.
really, so what stuck out to me was consistency creates confidence. That's what you said. So just get consistent and you'll start to see the repetition, the rewards, and everything will start to follow. And then you start adding in these systems.
Yeah, yeah, and I hope that helps. We can go deeper on that if you'd like, Brett. But I do want to encourage your listeners, like, just know you're not alone, right? A lot of times in sales, you get out there and we put on a good poker face and we think we have it all together, but when we get out there, we're like, holy cow, like I don't know what I'm doing. And those are the people I really, or the people who want, like, I think I'm doing things well, but I kind of want to do a checkup on myself and my good can always get better. Those type of people, I welcome them in too on this, and would love to connect with them on social media or wherever as well.
Great. So let's jump into our final segment. We got about 5 minutes left. This is segment 4, building a legacy beyond the numbers. And this is something you specifically called out to me in our brainstorm session. Was like, you're like, I'm gonna write a book every year. And I was like, wow, like that's a huge, awesome goal. And to share with everyone, tell me what's behind this.
Yeah, I think legacy is important. My dad's always talked about we move from success to significance,
Hmm.
right? A lot of times in life. And, Brett, I'm in the 40 club right now. So happy to be here. But you realize how quickly it goes. The other day, I was 20 something years old breaking into medical device, and you blink your eye and now I've got 3 kids later. I've got a 9-year-old, 7-year-old, and a little maniac 2-year-old, and life happens quick, right? And so I do think we're wired for helping that next generation, and that's kind of where the calling that I feel, Brett. I feel like I want to help those next generation of sellers coming up and encourage them in their game, because I know if I help them, families will be impacted, lives will be changed, and we'll help them avoid some of the hard pitfalls that I've made.
That's right. That's right. Let's just jump in rapid fire. Tell us about the leadership book currently in development.
Yeah, kind of building off the Relentless Sales book, I've got a heavy focus on leadership, for those reps that are moving from sales to management/leadership, right? And leadership is, like John Maxwell says, influence, right? No more, no less. And so what happens is, a lot of times, still to this day, big organizations, small organizations, we promote the best salesperson a lot of times, right? And so that's sometimes a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. I just don't think that development is there.
Mm.
So for the last 10 years of being a sales manager, I want to give those learning curves, those up, downs, potholes, things where I've screwed up. I want to share that with the reader. So for those that are getting that promotion, congrats. This future book will be for that individual.
All right. You also talked about writing a 90-day devotional project. Quick insight there.
Yeah, that one's pretty exciting. Again, kind of building off the Relentless Sales theme. This one is going to be more of a wisdom from the book of Proverbs, kind of a nugget based,
Mhm.
daily, very digestible, short paragraph with a sales story of some sort, and then a prayer to kind of kick the reader off for the day. So my encouragement for them. And again, a little bit of life lessons built in there, but really through biblical wisdom, which is so good, by the way.
Awesome. When you look at the next decade, what does success look like for you?
That's a great question. I try to make my expectations lower, right?
Mm.
I
Yeah.
don't want to put the weight of the world on my shoulders with the writing and the passion projects. I just want to encourage others, right? When I wrote Relentless Sales, I said if I encourage one person, right, in their sales career or their faith walk or what have you, and Brett, I get dozens of emails, DMs on LinkedIn just saying, "Man, your
Hmm.
book was so helpful." So I've exceeded that, and so for me, I'm playing with house money right now.
That's a great place to be. When I was on my walk listening to your book, the question that came to my mind was like, let's talk about the delta, right? The difference between everyone else and elite performers. It's that extra tenth of a second, that extra push to get to first base. When you think about medtech sales and sales in general, like what really comes down to you for that little difference that really takes you all the way?
Yeah, the word competitive comes to mind, right? But I would add competitive with like a savvy skill set, right? And then that relentless, never give up spirit. So I do think competitive reps is a start. For a lot of athletes get into sales in general, and it's good because I give this illustration to a lot of my reps. Yeah, we're talking. I'm like, hey, you're 10 chops into a 20 chop tree, and
Yeah.
you're expecting that tree to push over, and you're pushing on that tree, and you're 10 chops in. Have you ever chopped there's 10 more hard chops you got to make right now. And I think the competitive, the ones that say, hey, tell me more, doc. You mentioned this the other day. The ones that don't just roll over and say, you're right, I won't sell you my product. The ones say, can we dig on that later, doc? Can I buy you lunch? Like, I'm not going to leave you alone until you tell me why you think that product is better for your patients, but not in a way that annoys so those relentless, competitive, mixed with savvy salespeople, I think are the difference maker. And so that's kind of a long-winded way to answer a short question.
Yeah, I think we're like 3 chops in on a 20 chop tree with the amount of content that you're generating to give and serve for everyone. So I want to give you a huge virtual hug and thank you for being on the program today. We are just up at time. Do you have something that you can share with our listeners who are interested in getting into the?
Yeah, would love to invite your listeners to join the hunt, Brett. I think would love to put your 20% discount code. I know
Amazing.
yeah, so we'll put a discount code on there for everybody, but the hunt is launching July 1st. I would love for you guys to pick it up, check it out. I know it will help you. The end user, you, the listener, are going to benefit tremendously. And so can't wait to hear those stories. DM me on LinkedIn, message me. Would love to stay connected and excited for your next sales step.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jon. You've been an amazing guest. Episode 22 and 23, Fisher Search Group Leadership Podcast. We are talking about Relentless Sales, the hunt, and the difference makers in elite sales performance. You heard everything here. Like, subscribe, comment, and we will continue to serve up really great content. Jon, thank you so much and have a great rest of your week.
Good to see you, Brett. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everyone.